Here are 10 hip exercises to increase your lower body strength and endurance, while also unlocking your body's natural range of motion within the hips, starting with the glute bridge. Lie on your back with your knees bent and feet flat on the floor, about hip width apart. Make sure your back is as flat as possible. If your back is arching, tuck your tailbone and contract your abdominal muscles. This eliminates the excessive arching, giving you a neutral spine. Be sure to maintain this neutral spine throughout the movement. Drive your hips upward off of the floor by squeezing your glutes and abdominal muscles. Push your hips up until you create a straight line from your knees through your hips to your shoulders. This is the top of the position, so there's no need to press beyond that. Pressing your hips beyond that will take your lower back into hyperextension, and you'll lose that neutral spine, which will cause excessive pain and tension in your lower back. This is a great starting strength exercise for your abs, glutes, and hips. This exercise progresses to the glute bridge march. With your hips extended at the top position, lift one knee towards your shoulders. Pause for a second, then lower back down. Your goal here is to keep your hips extended without letting them drop at any point during the movement. I like to work one side at a time, so repeating the knee lift on one side for 12 to 15 repetitions before switching to the other side. This increases the time under tension for the stable side, thus increasing the strength and endurance required to keep your hips extended and body balanced, since essentially this side is getting no breaks, no rest as you go through the repetitions. You can progress even further by elevating your feet. The elevated glute bridge is an intermediate version of the previous movement that increases the overall range of motion. Start with your feet planted on an elevated platform. Press into your heels and drive your hips up. Start with smaller elevation if need be and work your way to higher heights. The higher the elevation, the more challenging this exercise becomes. Your body will also start to recruit your hamstrings as you introduce elevation. In fact, this can be a pretty intense hamstring exercise as you build the strength to move to higher elevations or into a higher rep range. For that extra challenge, don't forget to add the marching movement at each elevation to really push your endurance and coordination. The split squat hold. Get into a half-kneeling position with your bottom knee directly under your hip and your front knee bent at a 90-degree angle. Make sure you have a neutral spine, so back straight with no excessive extension. Lift your knee by pressing your back toes into the ground and supporting yourself on the other foot. Hold this position. This exercise is training your hips to hold up your body while remaining aligned with your spine and in good posture. So try to hold this position with good form for 30 seconds per side. If that's too much of a challenge, start with what you can. So hold for 5 seconds, then 10 seconds, then 15, then 20, and so on. This exercise establishes a lengthened front hip flexor position and strengthens your glutes, which this front hip flexor is often overlooked due to all the sitting that we do. It spends most of the time in a flexed position. So as simple as this move is, it'll prove a good challenge and really start to build your hips and lower body strength. Once you can get to a 30-second hold per side, progress to the split squat. Start in the same half-kneeling position. Push both feet into the ground and squat up. You want your torso to remain as upright as possible for the entire movement. So keep that tailbone tucked while squeezing your glutes and your core. A lot of people tend to hinge forward at the start of the movement, and you want to avoid that. That hinge is flexing that hip, essentially taking your front hip out of the movement and recruiting other muscles to compensate. Same with the descent here. Don't lean forward to compensate. If you notice you are still leaning during the movement and reminding yourself to tuck your tailbone isn't working, try extending your arms out as a counterbalance or behind your head to assist with keeping your chest high and torso aligned. If you're still struggling, revert back to the previous movement, the split squat hold, and continue to establish your front hip strength. You could also just have really tight hip flexors. To be honest, most people do. So in addition to working on your strength, I would suggest some additional deep stretches and mobility work to unlock that front hip flexor. And I'll have videos for that in the description below. You can add weight by holding dumbbells at your side or with a single dumbbell or kettlebell held in front of you at your chest like you see here. As you go through the motions, think about evenly distributing the weight between both legs. Your torso should still remain straight and aligned with your hips. People tend to lean forward when they add weight. They might be compensating as previously discussed, or it may be because they're thinking about loading that front quad. Doing so takes the strength component out of our hips and places majority of the weight onto that front quad. So for the sake of this exercise, we don't want to do that. So I want you to think about evenly distributing the weight between both legs. You're going to feel it in that front leg for sure, but you'll also feel it down your extended hip through that back quad as well. And by maintaining a neutral spine and forcing both of your legs to engage, you'll start to build that functional hip strength and mobility that we're going after. The split squat becomes harder when you elevate both feet. With the elevated split squat, the hips have a greater range of motion to work in, requiring more mobility, strength, and coordination. Make sure you can complete a few reps per side and maintain your balance before adding elevation to this movement. But increasing your range of motion is one of the best ways to truly unlock your hips, so this is a great move to work up to. The long split squat or deep lunge. Take a long stance much wider than the previous movement. Squat down, driving your front knee forward while also keeping your back knee straight and torso upright. Now you are really loading that front leg, so you want your knee to come over your toes. It's okay for your front heel to come off the ground, at least in this bodyweight version. A lot of people have tight ankles, prohibiting them from keeping their heels planted during this exercise. And we can address those tight ankles later, but for now, I want you to focus on getting a deep lunge, loading that front leg, and not bending that back knee. Moving in and out of this position like so actively trains your hips to move with your body while remaining properly aligned with your spine. Additionally, you are also getting some strength and coordination training in your quads, hamstrings, and front knee. Now, if you're having trouble getting good range of motion from this exercise, or maybe that front ankle is really tight and prohibiting you from reaching full depth, a good solution is to elevate your front heel, making this an elevated long split squat. Elevating that front foot provides enough assistance to help you get a full range of motion, and now you can increase the flexion in your knee and start training it to go over your toes. Build your strength and mobility here, and once you're comfortable with this exercise, add some weight. What you'll find is with added weight, you can actually get deeper into the bottom position. This will help you really unlock those hips and work on that ankle mobility or dorsiflexion. So you can eventually remove the elevation and perform this exercise with that front foot remaining flat on the floor. Now, any variation of the long split squat is an excellent move that will increase the mobility and strength of your entire lower body. So if I had to pick one move from this entire video, I'd probably pick this one. A close second, though, is the next exercise, the goblet squat. Start with your feet at least shoulder width apart or a little bit more. Hold a dumbbell, kettlebell, medicine ball, whatever you have for weight, right at your chest under your chin, with forearms and elbows going straight down. Slowly squat down, keeping your elbows on the inside of your knees. Doing so will force your knees and thighs to push outward, opening up your hips and allowing you to get that full range of motion. Descend slowly, keeping your torso as upright as possible, and bring your hips down as low as possible. Remain in control of the movement as you squat down, then back up. Don't cheat yourself by bouncing out of that bottom position. If you are noticing a bounce, either lower the weight or pause at the bottom before coming back up. This pause takes away the temptation to bounce, but it also increases the time under tension, which leads to more strength gains. The goal here is to do full squats, past parallel if you can, all the way down into a deep squat position. Ass to grass squats? I'm not sure if they still call it that, but full depth. However, this requires a lot of mobility and strength. So if this is feeling really tight, aim for parallel to start and work your way into that deep squat. Now, if getting to at least parallel depth is too much of a challenge, elevate your heels. Most people can get all the way down once they elevate their heels. As you begin to loosen up your ankles and gain back that mobility, You can decrease that elevation until you can reach that full range of motion out of this exercise. The goblet squat integrates everything that we've worked on thus far into one fluid motion. It's a highly beneficial exercise to strengthen your entire lower body. This will take your hips, knees, and ankles through a good range of motion while keeping your core stabilized and spine neutral. I'm sure you've noticed this by now, but the more open and flexible your hips are, the more progress and strength gains you'll be able to achieve from these exercises. So check out this latest video regarding hip flexibility, which complements this one nicely. Use these hip exercises as a standalone routine or as a supplement to your usual lower body strength routine. Either way, drink more water and have a great day.